Hello, my name is Zelda Hyde. I am the head of HR for Trilith Studios, formerly known as Pinewood Atlanta Studios.
Nice. So those are the studios that made what movies?
Oh, goodness.
Home to what
So
movies?
home to Ant-Man and the Wasp, Marvel, Avengers, Infinity Wars, some of the great blockbusters. So I'm proud and so excited to be a part of that organization. So.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you today because it's not often that I get to talk to people who are in the industry as well as people who actually are looking at after people, are interested in making sure to develop people. So your
Yes.
business is kind of my business, which is movies and people. And so I think that we should have a lot of fun. And Zelda was introduced by a mutual friend, and she came and experienced Reel. And we've been working on doing an event for Trilith, and we finally got it up and running. It's going to be in a couple of weeks, not too long away. So we're really
Yes.
excited about finally launching a real experience for the company. But
Yes.
today, I just want to explore your top 10 and look at have a little real conversation around your story. So tell
Cool.
me what is on your beautiful top 10 list.
So my top 10 consist of Remember the Titans, The Breakfast Club, Black Panther, When a Man Loves a Woman, Sling Blade, 42, Forrest Gump, The Passion of the Christ, Save the Last Dance, and The Equalizer.
And you are correct. There is your beautiful top 10.
Awesome.
I'll move over. No, I'll move over here so you can see them. But just always, pictures are worth 1,000 words. So when you look at those posters, it definitely, when you look at it, what do you think? Does it feel eclectic to you? Because it feels very eclectic to me. What would you say?
When I look at these movies and when I thought about my top 10 and how I went about selecting them, I think when I looked at them as a group, it certainly stood out to me that in many of these movies, you have, evil versus good, the hero, the protector. And so those
Mhm.
are some of the things that stood out to me immediately in many of these movies.
Nice. I think we're going to dive into that idea of protector, being the protector, a little bit later, because I saw it too as a
Cool.
pretty big theme in your top 10. But let's start off just talking about the characters. Is there any character that you really kind of resonate with most, or one that you feel like just intersects your story in such a powerful
Hmm.
way? Maybe just in who they are, not necessarily when you saw it or anything like
Okay.
that.
Okay. So, a character that I resonate most with, when I think about 42,
Hmm.
um, I think about just Jackie Robinson's, you know, life. And not that it's necessarily similar to mine. I'm a 70s baby, so I didn't deal with all of that, as much of that racism and what have you. But I do think about, a person who, operates with integrity and courage,
Mhm.
and really having to go up against the odds and be
Mhm.
persistent, as well as resilient.
Mhm.
And so those things, I think, in my everyday life and even in my work life, are things that I have to face regularly.
Hmm. So what would that look like for an HR person at a studio? Like, how does that play itself out where your inner Jackie Robinson is tested,
I would say, when I think about certainly operating with integrity, and so,
Mhm.
you know, I'm looked upon as a role model for our team members. And so it is important to me that I am, portraying the right attitude, which doesn't always happen. Some days are not as good as others, but portraying the right attitude, being sincere in my interactions with individuals, being persistent, also being a voice sometimes for others. And so I think that that's a big part of my job. And so I can relate there.
Yeah. I noticed one thing about your characters, and I want to dive into the first insight that I really found in your top 10 movies. And that was that there are a lot of people who are not necessarily welcomed to the in crowd or the establishment or the environment. They're not like all the others. They're sort of an outsider. But in actuality, they're more exceptional. And of course, Jackie Robinson really is representative, of that, of being a person of color who's, an outsider to this world of baseball that's definitely been white all this time. But you see that with so many of your other films too. You see that with, I love Save the Last Dance is probably a great example of that. It's almost the reverse of that. It's a
Right.
white girl who comes into a school of predominantly people of color, and her kind of being an outsider there and trying to find who she is. Then you look at Denzel and Remember the Titans. He's coming in as a black man into a racially divided community,
Exactly.
and as an outsider. And then, of course, Sling Blade and Forrest Gump. Those are those characters that are a little bit different, and to that outsider. And then if you even look at Jesus, Jesus is definitely the outsider who comes into an establishment of Pharisees and people who definitely view him as an outsider. And then even with the Breakfast Club, you just see all these outsiders who,
Exactly.
come into and kind of have relationships when they wouldn't have normally had relationships because of kind of the environment that suggests they should be in their own little cliques,
Yes.
So I feel like there's something in your story that's related to that concept of maybe feeling like the outsider, or maybe feeling like you've had to step into environments that are different. And I don't know if that speaks to you as a woman of color, or that speaks to just your story in life. How does this intersect, since it's so prevalent in your top 10 movies? How would you say this intersects your story?
Brian, you never cease to amaze me with how you analyze, and I'm going to be mad at you because you're going to make me cry. And I'm a crier, but you never cease to amaze me by how you pull out things. Because I'm familiar with the process, I looked at my movies, but never saw that. But you are absolutely right. The word outsider. So when I think about it, when I think about it from a work perspective, I am the HR department. And so I came to Trilith Studios almost 3 years ago. And they really hadn't had a true HR person in place since day one. And so I came in after they had been already in operation for, almost 3.5 years.
Wow.
And so I came in, there were programs in place, but they were really in maintenance mode. And so I came in and really built the HR structure, what you would normally see in an organization. And so I feel like I came in as the outsider. Many of the team members were didn't have a lot of experience in a corporate like environment, and so unfamiliar with HR a bit, and not clear on what's my role. So when I came in and observed how things were set up and started making small changes here and there, I was met with some resistance from not only team members but also the some of the management. And so I certainly felt like an outsider. Even today, sometimes I still feel like an outsider just because my role is so different from the other roles that exist, and there are teams and what have you. But I'm an outsider, but I'm also a big part of the family. So it's, I've kind of learned to accept this is my role here. I lean on God quite a bit in accepting that, but that's very, very true.
It's interesting that you say that, because there's several things I think about when, based on what you were just saying. One is, it sounds like you were Coach Boone coming into that community, as far as trying to bring
Exactly.
people together. And that's what your job is as an HR person, is to kind of step into this pre-established community and say, okay, I'm here to shake things up and kind of make sure people are actually working together well,
Yeah.
so I can see that picture in my head really, really well. I also think that this must be like if we were to interview lots of HR people, I would imagine this would be a common thread from the standpoint of feeling. I wouldn't say it would show up in their movies, but I would say maybe this would be a common thread as far as feeling like you're trying to have to constantly insert yourself into the business to show that you have value, right?
Definitely.
And you do have value. I'm not trying to diminish that. I'm just trying to say it's almost like the business is running and you're trying to say, hey, yeah, but I'm the outsider here saying, oh, but your teams are not really, functioning
Exactly.
well, or, you're not looking at
Exactly.
this aspect of development or training. So
Right.
it feels
Well,
like that would be true. Is that something that you recognized early in your career would be a difficulty in HR, or was it something that was sort of an on the job surprise?
so I have to say that I've been really fortunate in the fact that the companies that I've worked for, small and large, have been set up prior to my coming on board to really have a true appreciation for the HR function. And so I really haven't been in a role um, until feeling like maybe 3 years ago when I started this role. And it wasn't with everyone, it was with a few people. But prior to that, I really didn't feel like I had to sell folks on HR.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to come into organizations where, they saw based on an experience or some other thing, they saw the value and the importance of having HR and structure and guidelines and HR's perspective in play.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I can understand how it probably has to do a lot with the size of the company too. I would imagine too, is
Yes.
where you're growing with the company and they realize they need an HR person. And then they have to figure out how that intertwines with what they've been doing,
Exactly.
the business they've
Exactly.
been doing. So from a personal side, and again, you can share whatever you'd like, from the standpoint of this idea of an outsider or a person who's trying to come into an environment. And I want to stress the exceptionalism of this too. In Save the Last Dance, she's an exceptional dancer, right? And when she comes into this environment, yeah, she's an outsider, but she wins people over by the fact that she can dance really exceptionally. And then the same thing with Jackie Robinson. He wins people over to a certain degree in the fact that he's just an excellent ball player, right?
Mhm.
And you can't deny that. And I even feel like, Forrest Gump and Sling Blade, like these are characters who are misperceived at the beginning as outsiders, but then when you see the scope of their life or their heart, especially with those two characters, you realize how much how they're exceptional. They're not, the outsider. And even with Coach Boone, he comes in and really transforms the community by his wanting to win, like to be exceptional. So I think that there's this tension, it seems to me, in your story between this, hey, you might see me as an outsider first, but wait till you see how exceptional I am. Has that played out in your life at all? Even at a young age, was there anything that, any story that you can remember of how this has played out in your life?
So, something that just immediately, hits me is that when I was in kindergarten, um, really the age of 5,
Mm-hmm.
I had moles all around my eye.
Oh,
And
wow.
my older sister, Xanthia, used to count them, and she would be like 31, 32. I mean, I had that many.
Oh my
And,
gosh.
and so,
Thank
kids,
you, sister, for counting my moles.
exactly.
I'm already self-conscious enough and you're
Right, right.
giving me the number.
And so when I would go to school, every day, just about. Kids can be so cruel at school. The
Mhm.
kids would ask me, what's on your face? What is that you got on your
Uh-huh.
face? What's going on? And, I was sensitive then. I'm very sensitive now. And so, I'd cry, I'd come home and tell my parents, the kids keep teasing me at school. And I felt like an outsider,
Mhm.
because I was on display and I didn't feel like I was a part of the group. And so
Mhm.
my parents would tell me, I was brought up in the church, and my parents would tell me that God made me and He made my molds, and I'm no different
Uh,
than anyone else, and that I should pray about it. And so
I
at
want
the
to
age
stop
of
you for one
5,
second. Do you know that that's the exact line that Forrest Gump's mother tells him? She
yes,
says, "Forrest, you're no different than anybody else." That
yes,
was his mom saying that.
yes.
Wow, that's incredible that your parents were saying the same
Yes, at the
thing.
age of 5,
Yeah.
in 1975. And so, I started praying, that because I would go to Sunday school and I knew, I understood that there was a God, not quite how all that works, but I just decided I'm going to pray because I didn't want to be bullied anymore. And
Mhm.
so, probably 6 months after I started praying, really at night, I would say my prayers, and that would be one of them. Have the kids stop teasing me. Please make these moles go away.
Mhm.
And so, probably I would say 6 months after I had started praying, one day I came home from school and my eye, that eye, with all the moles around it, had swollen up really bad.
Oh my
And
God.
so my mom put an ice pack on it and said, go to bed, go to sleep, rest, and keep this ice pack on it. Brian, when I woke up the next morning, every single mole was completely gone from my face.
Oh my gosh, what a miracle. That's incredible. That had
So,
to be
I mean,
that had to be like, oh my, I mean, how did you even process that as that young,
so
that's
at,
incredible.
as a 5-year old, certainly I didn't really understand the concept of faith, and, but I knew that I had asked God to do something and
Mm,
that He did it. And
that's
so that
incredible.
really set the groundwork, really my foundation, with my belief in God.
Mhm.
But it also, speaks to the whole outsider thing, and that you may feel like this at one point, but it doesn't always have to be that way. And to your point, you may think I'm an outsider, but watch what God's going to do for me in six
Mm.
months.
Yeah, exactly. How would you, I know it's hard to talk about yourself. So, um, you know, what would you say is the exceptionalism of you, Zelda? Like, what do you feel like is your superpower? The dancing with Save the Last Dance, the ball playing with 42 and Titans. I'm not looking for a direct parallel, parallel, but just like, when people get to know you, what would they say? And I wish we had someone who could say it for you, would be the exceptionalism that they would find in you.
I I think about, just my compassion for
Mm-hmm.
others, empathy for others, wanting to be, when I think about protector,
Mm-hmm.
wanting to be the protector. I think that that's something that, I bring to the table. Also, a relationship builder. It is just in me to, without hesitation, I don't mean a stranger. And my friends do say that about me. But I'm a relationship builder, and, you know, I have a lot of compassion for people.
So let's look at this concept of protection, because boy, I saw it all over your top 10. And even with what you were just talking about with, Forrest Gump and Sling Blade, like their hearts are driven. Like what makes them exceptional is their hearts. Forrest's heart for Jenny and to protect Jenny. I think of the scene of where he comes into the bar and she's on the stage playing naked, and he just like takes her off the stage, or whenever I think there's a scene where one of the Black Panther party where the guy's like being abusive to her or whatever, and he comes in and beats the guy up, protecting her. And then Lieutenant Dan, how he goes into the jungle and just drags him out, even though Lieutenant Dan's telling him to leave him to die. And then
Right.
of course Sling Blade, it's all about his heart for this family, right? This
That's so
boy and
true.
his mom, and and to protect them, based on his own experience. But, let's keep going, because then you have The Equalizer, where it's the same kind of, Denzel plays this character who's like, I'm going to protect this woman, from this Russian mafia, I think is who they're after. And then, of course, you have movies like The Passion, obviously, with Jesus being such a protector. But for me, it was funny because it's men protecting women and children specifically, from abuse / bad men. All these people are like jump into their heart, just is driven around, hey, how can I step in on behalf of women and children? And then I wrote also, is men listening and encouraging women, which is When a Man Loves a Woman and Save the Last Dance. So in both of those cases, there's this man who's there to encourage that woman and realizing that they need to listen. And I wrote the quote from an Equalizer in the trailer. It says, "I'm here about a girl." And that's why he's there to kind of protect the girl. So when you hear all that, like, what do you hear? I know probably based on my experience with Real, there's two sides of the equation usually when it comes to this. One is, I'm sure that you are a protector, just like these characters who protect. And then there's probably the flip side, which I often see in people's movies, where it's the longing to be protected, like that. So tell me how that theme that seems to be in your story kind of intersects any moment in your life, or any kind of any moment in your life that you feel like is a story of how this has played itself out.
Interesting. So I would say that, certainly in my life, my father has played, certainly a huge role in my life as a protector, a provider, always instilling in my sister and I you know, that there's nothing we can't do and that he'll always have our backs. I never worried about, oh, wonder if I don't, have money for this. Some friends I had maybe dated drug dealers and what have you. I didn't have to worry about that, because if I didn't have it, I knew my father or my parents would have that for me. And then ultimately, if my father didn't have it, my father in heaven had it. And so I never had to worry about those things. I think that something that's also interesting is that, I'm a huge protector of my children, and especially my daughter, both my daughters certainly, but my oldest daughter was diagnosed with alopecia, which is an autoimmune deficiency condition, which causes your body to think that its hair is attacking it.
Oh
And
my
so it
gosh.
prevents the hair from growing.
Oh,
So
wow.
at the age of 7, my daughter lost really all of her hair. It started first with a bald spot, and then she dealt with a bullying situation. It's believed that stress can bring it on, or it's genetic. Um, Later on, we realized that it is in her, genes on her father's side. But I had to be, mama bear protector for her. She dealt with so much bullying at school, and people teasing her and saying she had cancer. And I don't know when that's ever funny, but with alopecia, she lost every single strand of hair on her body. She
Oh
has
my
no
goodness.
eyebrows, no eyelashes. And if you can imagine a 7-year-old in second grade, I believe she was in at the time, having to start the day with a wig, putting a wig on, because I asked her, I said, do you want to go to school? You get to choose. Would you want to wear your hair bald, or would you prefer to buy a wig? At the time, the show Hannah Montana was popular. Hannah
Oh
wore,
yeah.
this long wig, and so
Yeah.
she said she wanted a wig and picked out the longest wig. I said maybe we should go a little bit shorter, but
Wow.
she did. It was fairly obvious that she had a wig on, and so dealt with a lot of bullying, pretty
Mm.
much up until she got to high school. And so I got to know every single teacher, every single principal, some mamas, very, very well. And it was also about just, again, just drawing on and depending on God to protect my daughter and so that's also a part of me being a protector. When I think about Sling Blade and also
You
the
being the equalizer for,
equalizer.
yeah.
Yeah, me being the protector and having, a heart for my daughter, certainly, but others as well. So that's what immediately comes to mind. Um, I also would say, I recently have gone through a divorce. And so I'm wanting my heart to be protected. So
I
those are
can
the things that
imagine. Yeah.
immediately come to mind.
Yeah. I guess the first question after listening to that is, how is your daughter now? Like, where is she and how is she thriving? And what does it look like?
My daughter is doing extremely well. So with alopecia, your hair, it's so um, unpredictable. And so her hair has grown back, not
Wow.
fully, but
Huh.
maybe a patch here. At one point, she was rocking a mohawk. Um, she
Nice.
she's never felt fully comfortable like going to school without her wig, but we used to go, to Target and what have you, and she wouldn't wear her wig and she'd have a mohawk because it's just the way it grows.
Yeah.
So we've had periods of time where her hair has grown back, but probably over the past 3 years, nothing has grown back.
Mm.
Sydney graduated from high school in 2020, so she was one of those unique
Yeah.
seniors
Mhm.
who really didn't get to experience, March on a Thursday last year, we learned that prom was canceled. And she was all excited about going to prom, and prom was on that Saturday. So prom canceled, but she didn't take it. She was fine with it. Really, no graduation, but our small community did a parade for all the high school students, and they shut down roads and everything. And so that was a big deal.
Mhm.
She is now a freshman at Kennesaw State University, has just completed her first semester at Kennesaw. Her major is biology. She wants to be a veterinarian.
Wow.
And she is doing really well. I think
So I just have to ask, is she wanting to protect animals? Like, has she
you
gotten
know
that gene from you
I
after being
think so.
protected?
I think so.
Mm.
And so she's doing extremely well. Thank you for
Wow.
asking.
Well, in listening to the two things that you've said about your story, I mean, hopefully, I mean, obviously you can see them connected. Yes. About here. I mean, when I usually ask people, like, where do you think you got that protection spirit from, or that wanting to, like, where did that first start? And you telling the story of, the moles on your face and stuff like that. And I think that do you look back at that and see that as almost providential to prepare you to be protective of your daughter, who at almost the same age was dealing with the same kind of bullying and the same kind of like, did it amplify that, do you feel like? Or do you feel like that was something that you can see in other parts of your life as far as being a protector? Or do you really go, no, this kind of moment in my life of being bullied kind of just like turn that character trait on in a big way whenever my daughter was experiencing the same thing?
That's a good question. I think that I've always been that way,
Mhm.
even even before having children.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure that it brings something even stronger because it resonates so much with me.
Yeah.
Um, and it didn't really until you just said that I hadn't thought about it, but it probably does because I know what it feels like to be bullied.
Yeah.
My situation was fixed by what I consider a miracle. I do believe that, one day Sydney, will have her hair back.
Mm.
And will be for God to get the glory. But I do believe, yes, that
Yeah.
did play a role or does play a role in me
Well,
wanting
and
to.
that's the mystery of God, right? Where sometimes he does heal and sometimes he it's wait, or sometimes it's no,
Right.
and that's part of the mystery of God is that but it sounds like that you have this wonderful, I always think of curses that we pass down generationally, and yet there sounds like there's this wonderful blessing that you're passing down generationally of this protective spirit, with her. I mean, just anybody I've known who've gone into veterinarian school or wanting to, they usually are highly protective of
Yes.
animals, like
Yes.
they have this empathy and heart, like you described earlier.
Yes.
So it sounds like you have this blessing that's being passed down, even though it seems like in suffering.
Awesome.
Yeah. Last question is a funny question, is just a playful question, which is, it in any of the titles so you're no longer Zelda who works at Trilith Studios now. You are actually have your own act on the Las Vegas strip. So you've definitely moved past the HR, and you have you're trying to express your exceptionalism on the Las Vegas Strip in some sort of act. What title in your top 10 movies are you going to use for your Las Vegas act? Which of your titles?
The Equalizer.
Should I ask what this act is going to be? Or should we just let people fill in the blanks?
It's going to be great, whatever it is.
It's good. I love it. Well, Zelda, thanks so much for today. I love that we went through so many different insights that people can learn what it looks like to put themselves in the shoes of an HR person who's stepping into as an outsider, and in a smaller or an organization where you have to establish HR. I think that's just so valuable to listen to. And then just from a personal standpoint, understanding your story of how you became a protector, how you became this equalizer, how you understand the concept and can care for the outsider. And I just love every bit of your story. So thanks so much for sharing it and for connecting it to your movies and allowing me to throw some spaghetti on the wall of your life and see if it sticks or that kind of thing.
I thank you for giving me the opportunity and for helping me see things more clearly. You have such an incredible gift, and I'm so grateful that our paths have crossed. And so thank you.